Do you want to cast your funky spells and move at the same time? Maybe you want to see some big fucking numbers. Or you want to shoot out a flaming ball of ass destruction. Perhaps you want to laugh maniacally as everything around you burns to ashes. If you answered yes to any of these amazing questions, then oh boy, do I have the class for you. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, why should I listen to this random dick on the internet? And the answer to that is because I'm fucking telling you to. Now that we've cleared that up, let's get into the nitty gritty titty of my favourite class and spec of all time, the Balanced Druid. The Fire Mage. Now, usually Fire Mage is one of those specs that starts off pretty slow and then really starts to lift off and pack the biggest of fucking punches at the later stages of the expansion. However, in Cataclysm, it's not quite like that. Now, don't get me wrong, they do exponentially get stronger as you get further into the expansion and get higher level gear, but the difference this time is that even at the very start of the expansion, mages still perform very well thanks to some key new abilities they get, such as the new combustion, which just hits like a fire truck into a small food stand, the fire truck being combustion and the small food stand being that one poor druid that got stuck out in a zone defending when the rest of his team went off to capture a different flag. Now, I could go on about how much Fire Mage absolutely slaps, but let's get into how to actually play. To start off, this is what your talent tree is going to look at when the pre-patch launches and you're level 80. And then, as you level to 85, you will put the last 2 points into Piercing Ice for the crit chance in the Frost tree. Then from 83 to 85, your last 3 points will go into Netherwind Presence in the Arcane tree. And this is what it will look like at 85. As for glyphs, for your primals, you want to take Fireball for the extra crit, Pyroblast for the extra crit, and Molten Armor for the extra crit. For major glyphs, it's a little bit more preference, but I always take Dragon's Breath for the reduced cooldown to get more chances for impact procs during multi-target situations, which we'll talk more about later on. Then I will always take Evocation, as the heal is super nice for topping you up in dungeons, but also for speed when questing, as instead of stopping to eat between killing things for your quest, you can just quickly pop an Evo and boom, you're full health, mana, and Bob's your uncle. Then, this last choice is very preference. I usually go between Blink or Invisibility. Blink is nice just to get that extra bit of range to get in and out of things, which we'll discuss later on. But then Invisibility is also great for the extra move speed for cases where maybe you're questing and you need to run past a load of enemies, you don't really want to kill them all to go get like a pickup for a quest, or you got caught off in PvP and need to run away quickly to like reposition yourself. But you could also go for Blast Wave for the extra slow duration. I'm not honestly a big fan of it, but I know some people like it. I think the other options are just better. So, as for minor glyphs, I always take Mirror Image to make them shoot fireballs because they'll benefit from the extra fire damage passive from taking Fire Spec, which is very underrated as it's the only minor glyph that actually provides a damage increase. So it's super, super good for a minor glyph. Then I'll always take Glyph of Slowfall so I don't have to use a reagent anymore. It just saves some bag space and it's very quality of life. And as for the last one, you can take whatever you like really, but I typically go for Glyph of Armors so I don't have to reapply Molten Armor as often. But you could also take one of the mana reduction ones, where if you do, I'd recommend going for Conjuring instead of Arcane Brilliance, because the Conjuring affects both your food craft and your mana gems, which you will use a lot more than you'll use Arcane Brilliance. Let's get into rotations. Your main single target rotation is relatively simple, apart from the aspect of min-maxing your combustion proc, which is what really offsets a good fire mage from a great one, like me. So, for your single target rotation, if you have the time before the pull, you want to precast a Pyroblast, which, thanks to our talent Critical Mass, will apply the 5% crit buff, and then you want to apply Living Bomb. If you don't have time to precast full Pyro, then you can just use Scorch and the Living Bomb. It's also worth noting that if someone else in your group can apply that 5% crit buff, then you don't have to Scorch, but I always will anyway, as I don't trust other people to do their jobs. Now, after the opening, you mainly just want to spam Fireball for hotstreak procs, whilst maintaining your Living Bomb. Whenever you need to move, you can either cast Fire Blast if it's up and you don't need to move that much, or use Scorch if you need to sprint the fuck out of there. Now, when you do get a hotstreak proc, you are ideally looking to get a crit from it with the instant pyro in order to get a huge ignite with your pyro dot and your Living Bomb to maximize combustion damage. So a little trick I like to do is when you cast your instant pyro, immediately before it lands, reapply your Living Bomb, even if it hasn't exploded yet, so that if your pyro does crit, you get that ignite up, you instantly pop combustion to get the full effects from all your dots. So how combustion works is it will take the total remaining damage on each of your dots on the target and add them together. So if any of them ticked before you used that combustion, then you'll just have lost that extra damage. That's why we reapply the Living Bomb, as it's not worth using combustion if there's only 2 seconds left on it. After your combustion, you just want to continue with your usual priority of Fireball, using Pyro with hotstreak procs, and Fire Blast or Scorch when moving. So let's talk about multi-target, which honestly isn't much different from single target apart from a couple of things. The reason being is that if the pack will live long enough, you just want to do your single target rotation on a priority target and then spread your dots on it with your new talent Impact. The way this will usually work is you cast Pyroblast into Living Bomb on the priority target, then cast Blast Wave, as it was also cast Flame Strike if on 2+ targets, in order to get an Impact proc to spread those dots. If you don't get an Impact proc from the Blast Wave, then follow that with a Dragon's Breath. Usually you will get an Impact proc by now, but if not, cast Flame Strike till either you get one or your dots are running too low to where it isn't worth spreading anymore. You'll get a feel for this over time. After that, you want to just do your single target rotation of Fireballs till you get Hotstreak while keeping Living Bomb up on your target. Now when you do get a Hotstreak proc, don't use it right away. You want to make sure you have an Impact proc ready. So following the same rotation I mentioned earlier to get an Impact proc based on what abilities you have up, then when you do get one, cast the instant Pyro into reapplying the Living Bomb for the same reason as I mentioned earlier, the single target rotation. Then pop your Combustion if it's up, and then use your Impact proc to spread all of that. If you didn't manage to get an Impact proc and your hot streak is about to run out, then just cast the Pyro and hope for a last second Impact proc. But by now, the pack is probably already dead or close enough to where it doesn't matter, and you just gotta pack your bags and go next. However, when the stars do align, get that huge Pyro crit, pop Combustion, you spread it to the entire pack. Oh my god, is it beautiful. I have never witnessed something as glorious as all those numbers packed together on my screen. It is simply orgasmic, and it is what I live for. Now, if the pack is going to die very quickly, you know, it's low health mobs, maybe you're not doing heroics, you're doing a normal dungeon, you're just blasting through, and you won't have time to look for that optimal dot spread, then I recommend just casting a Pyro into Living Bomb on your priority target, Blast Wave into Dragon's Breath into spamming Flame Strike. And then also, obviously, if at any point during that you have an Impact proc, use it to spread the Pyro Dot and Living Bomb. Now, as for a few tips when playing Fire Mage, when you start to pull on a boss, don't wait till you're about to run out of mana before using a mana gem. Ideally, you'll want to use it as soon as you can while still maximizing the mana you get from it, so that you can get that cooldown rolling as soon as possible. Then, when you do run out of mana, and the fight's still going on, you can use Evocation, and by the time you run out of mana again, you'll likely have another mana gem charge up, and if somehow the fight is still going and you run out of mana again with no mana gems and no Evocation, you'll want to swap over to Mage Armor and only cast Scorch instead of Fireball, as it's free to use thanks to our talent Improve Scorch. Now do note you can still use your instant Pyros as they don't cost mana either. This will allow you to regenerate mana super fast and swap back to Molten Armor and using Fireball when you have enough mana to finish the fight. Something else you should do is after every single pack, even if it's just for a second, you want to start eating some food. to regain a little bit of mana for the next pack, as mage food is infinite anyway, and every bit of mana you get will add up, and it can and will be the difference in you being able to participate in a couple extra packs than if you didn't eat between each pull. Let's talk about some of the other mage utility and defensive spells. So our main oh shit, I'm so fucked defensive spell is Ice Block. Maybe you stepped into something you really shouldn't have. Maybe you were pumping too hard and are about to get bitch slapped by the big scary boss. Maybe you accidentally sent your flame orb the wrong way and pulled a pack you shouldn't have and are now regretting every mistake you ever made. Well, don't you worry, because for the small price of clicking a single button, you can turn into a big block of ice and say to your teammates, yeah, you can deal with that. Which leads me to the next spell, Invisibility, which you can use to get the fuck out of there and wait for your team to wipe, so you can stay and live and laugh at them while you try to bring the healer back with your engineering defibrillator, and chuckle to yourself when you see his health bar reappear, as you know deep down they are all super mad at you, but can't kick you because at the same time you technically just saved them. Another spell, which is kind of a defensive spell, but also does decent damage, is Mirror Image. Now, before in Wrath, you would always precast this first in order to get the 18% damage from your tier set, which isn't the case now. Obviously, if you know you won't need to use it defensively, or you just have massive balls like I do, then you should still precast this before pulls, as it's extra damage you wouldn't have otherwise. But in other cases where maybe you take threat off some enemies in the pack, accidentally pull something, maybe there's just a caster in the pack that for some reason is out to get you, just cast Mirror Image to spawn 3 shittier versions of yourself, which will take all the abuse in your place so you can continue to stand still and blast the fuck out of your enemies. Now, as a Fire Mage, you still have access to 2 abilities, Frost Nova and Cone of Cold. These are amazing abilities which are usually forgotten about by the mediocre Fire Mages, but can be super useful utility for keeping things off of you or keeping things packed together to AoE down. So, do you ever find yourself in a situation where your Dragon's Breath and Blast Wave are on cooldown, but you really need something to get those pesky monsters off your tits? Well, look no further. You may be a Fire Mage, but that doesn't mean you can't dabble in the Arts of Frost. These 2 spells should never be ignored and can be the difference in living or dying. Another new spell added in Cataclysm is Ring of Frost. This is amazing for if you're fighting a pack which has enemies that leap to random targets. If you place this at your feet when starting the pack, if any of them leap to you, they will immediately get frozen and keep you safe. Another great spell is Spell Steal. There are plenty of buffs that enemies get, which you can steal for huge power boosts, so you always want to keep an eye out for these. Mages also have Decurse, which is great utility for the group when dealing with lots of curses. Now, the last, but certainly not least utility spell, Blink. This is the notorious mage movement spell for getting you out of sticky situations, or maybe to put yourself into them, because you want to get into the action as soon as possible. There are so many uses for this spell, from moving out of or into certain boss mechanics while keeping your damage up. Maybe your shaman fucked off somewhere with his totems, so you need to blink towards them. Maybe your healer dropped a heal over time zone nowhere near you, and since you are the main protagonist, you should be getting all of the heals, so you gotta blink into that. The list goes on. Now, in Cataclysm, mages also do get their own bloodlust called Time Warp, but ideally you don't want to abuse one of your globals on it, so just try to leave that to the shamans or even a hunter pet, if you can. So, if this hasn't at least got you a little interested in trying out Fire Mage in Cataclysm, then there's no hope for you, and I don't even want to talk to you anymore. Just kidding. All jokes aside, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, I would really appreciate it if you would leave a like on the video, and leave a comment on what you thought, maybe give some feedback as to what I can improve on. Also, if you would like to see more future videos, make sure to subscribe. Thank you for watching, have a good rest of your day, and I will see you later. Peace.